Well, a lot of it is just part of sitting down and figuring out where you want to be. One of the issues that we dealt with in Morgan County was essentially that. Had the longest average commute of any county in Utah because a lot of the people there driving down to the Wasatch Front for jobs. They didn't have jobs close by. They see people moving out, et cetera. And so a big part of their effort was talking about economic development, what form it should take, where it ought to be in the community, what impact it would have on the community. And so again, these things have to be tailored to individual communities and regions, and the solutions in one don't necessarily translate to another, but there are circumstances here that are different. If you're not growing, you got to think about whether you want to do things to attract growth, and there probably are some strategies, but I wouldn't suggest that I could come in right now and say, here are the solutions. That has to be the product of the public talking.
To add that, oh, go ahead, and I'll add my question.
Oh, I was just going to say one more thing. Speaking of talking to the public, you know, as I talked about, there's the year-round population that lives here. But you also have what I think is an asset of a lot of people who have a vested interest in the region through either second homes or just the tourists themselves. What do they want? Trying to figure out what might get them to come here more often and spend. Are there services that aren't being provided that they might be interested in? Is there enough of a volume that perhaps you could develop some of these economic development strategies? Personally, if I had a second home in the region, I would love to find a way to be here more often. So if I had a business interest where I could expand into Bear Lake, sure. And I don't know that that would happen, but you can look at some of these other options as well as you're surveying the public and looking for ideas there as well. So just a thought.
Frigid cold doesn't lend itself in about 3 months out of the year. And the hardy souls stay here. But a lot of folks wave as they drive by. They need to choose to drive by.
Yeah, that's true. I'm curious to Ken about how you handled in the, probably between you and Alan, but how you handled the snowbirds, because that's the other half of our people that leave, they come to you. So how did you handle that in the visioning process?
In terms of including them in the process?
Did you hurry and do it while they were gone?
No. No, and my recollection of the steering committee efforts to get that public involvement, we consciously discussed that issue and made sure that the chip game opportunities were during the time of year where snowbirds were present, so they had the opportunity to get out there and to get again the word out to their informal networks to participate. I'm just trying to think if there are any other particular efforts. Alan, anything else that?
Yeah, so when we did the process, we tried to find out where people's main residence was, would ask them, and so we were able to look at the data for those that lived in the area year-round versus those who were the snowbirds and make some comparisons. Typically, we avoid doing public processes in the summer because people are gone and it's hard to get their attention. We thought if we were going to do something here, we'd do some things in the summer and try to get that input and see if we could parse out the data, visitors versus full-time residents.
Did you find it was different between your snowbirds and full-time people?
A little bit, but not materially different. Yeah. One of the issues that you have to look at down there, water, like everywhere else, and in figuring out the water issues, it's sometimes hard to figure out what your population is in order to determine water use because it does change so much during the year. So that was something that we wrestled with a little bit. We wrestled with the transportation modeling a little bit because there are peaks and valleys. But in terms of the values that people had and the things that they wanted to see in the region, not that different. Not that different.
How would you see, I got the mic, I can ask all I want. We kind of have a, I don't know if you address this in your different populations, but we kind of have two different, rather than maybe the two states being so different as that we have the recreation around Bear Lake population and maybe their goals I don't know, maybe their visions are different than if we go over to Woodruff and Randolph or up to Georgetown. So we kind of have two different populations, you know, maybe in our economic strategies, I guess. So do you see those things being problems in doing a visioning? Or how do you, I mean, would you go to Woodruff and just have your sessions over there? Or, you know, would it be more important that we mix? Or I just thought, how would we do that?
Number of different ways you do it, and typically we use the steering committee to help make those decisions. The people that live here and understand the dynamics are the ones that decide when you do it, where you do it, et cetera. But if I were going to suggest something, I'd say we'd want to have a range of locations for the workshops. I think I mentioned in Cache Valley there were 10 of them spread around from Dayton to Logan to, you know, farther south. So I would think you'd want to do some in Woodruff and some Paris or Montpelier and some in this area. You would want to find out the background on those participating. Are they year-round residents? Are they not? So I think it would, I wouldn't say it would be a problem. I'd say it would be an issue that is real and needs to be addressed and ought to be discussed as part of the process.
In the Vision Dixie process, we did have meetings up in Enterprise and in New Harmony just for that reason. We have another interesting dynamic down there. We did not have a meeting in Hilldale, the polygamous community. And that was after consulting with the mayor of Hilldale, asking him directly, should we come out there and engage? And he was the one who said, no, that probably wouldn't get you a lot. So we didn't do a meeting in Hilldale.
Okay. Did you have another?
Yeah. I just sit here, and, being from Idaho, I don't see anybody on this panel as is from Idaho. How do we get more of these Idaho people involved, such as what you guys are doing? I moved up here from Utah 5 years ago, but it's like say the whole panel right there is from Utah, and we're trying to stop that boundary across the lake, but I just don't see it. I mean, how do we get more people involved? Are we too far away from Boise or what? I don't know. It was just kind of ironic that I see that's the way it is. You know, and you guys are putting some good input. You know, I'm glad I came to this. I learned a lot. I thank you guys.
How many locals here from Idaho? Just curious.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, we're actually working up in Pocatello right now. The project's on hold, but when they went out for consultants, and this is one that Marcy went on and Carlos went on too, when we finally got to the public, there between Idaho Falls and Boise, there was no consultants to even choose from, is what we heard. So, you know, they went down to Salt Lake and somehow found my outfit, and we went up and talked to them. We actually did the Port Neuf Greenway a long time ago, about 18 years ago. We were in Pocatello. But as far as I know, yeah, there's just a shortage of qualified consultants up in that part of southern and eastern Idaho. Maybe it's just that simple.
And I think that also just, I mean, that when we work between the two states, the state governments are set up so different. You know, there isn't a governor's office of budget planning that does this kind of planning. I mean, I'm sure they're planning and doing budgets, but they don't do the same kind of thing. And honest, we searched for it. We tried to find somebody from Idaho. We didn't stack this deck on Utah. I don't know, Reed, maybe you could address that a little bit. I mean, do you find that you don't have the resources?
No, the only one I could think that could possibly be here today would be Whisper Mountain. They've never even tried to take on a project of this magnitude. Up around Boise, up in the Panhandle, it might be different, but in the southeast corner of Idaho, do the commissioners, do you guys know of anybody? We just don't.
There was one company that I found that did the city of Victor
Right.
and Blaine counties, and they were from Illinois or somewhere.
Right, they were out of state. There was one that did Sun Valley, and they were from the East Coast. So, as we talked about, as Alan talked about this thing about being able to get people together during the summer, that's part of been driving our very forceful timeline, and so I'm going to drive that very forceful timeline right here some more because we want, is there a possibility that we could be working this summer? And there's two questions I'm going to throw out there to all of you. And is there a possibility that, because I'm like the little girl on Willy Wonka, I want it and I want it now. I know the bad egg detector's gonna get me. I think there's interest here to do an envisioning process and to work with Envision Utah. I know there's a lot of interest in the detail and working all the way down to ordinances and the kinds of things that Sumner brings and to bring Marcy's stuff in. Can we have it?